all those, at least all those who have said good afternoon, have read the case. Am I correct? Vanya, Tushar, I forget who was the third one.
Yes, ma'am. Not complete, but most cases we have read.
Okay, we started reading Mayor Hans George.
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
talking about Mayor Hans George case today that we're going to discuss.
Yes, ma'am. That
I'm
one.
actually tried, but the case is very big, man. Difficult to
If you
understand.
think this is big, then what will you do in the constitution of where you have heard the name of the case, Keshwananda Bharti?
Ah, yes, ma'am. 13
1500
judge bench.
pages. 1500 pages.
Okay, ma'am.
We
वही
tried our
पढ़
best,
पढ़ेंगे.
ma'am.
As long as you started, it's okay. You will pick up speed, but keep reading and don't give up, because once you get interested, that how the facts have been interpreted, once that picks with you, then you will really enjoy reading cases. That how the lawyers um, present same facts from two different angles, how they find uh, differences, importance of certain words used or omission of certain words. Once they start focusing on that one, it will become very, very interesting to you. It will be like a novel only. Do you read, what do you call them, those novels, जो जासूसी किताबों को क्या कहते हैं, जासूसी novels को?
Detective fiction.
Detective stories. These are quite, quite interesting once you start
Yes, ma'am.
understanding that what is it and why you are reading it. Once you read the case for the class, it's a very boring purpose. But if you think, okay, I'm going to pick up the techniques of lawyering, then to focus as to how, and this is a very interesting case from that angle, because in this case, again, the same facts, and there is agreement also on the interpretation of law. There's no difference in the interpretation of law of the minority and the majority judge. The difference has come at the stage of application of that principle. So you will learn that it is not, because in the earlier one, what we were looking was that they were they were interpreting facts differently, whether they were part of one series or not. So there was no question of interpretation involved there. Here, the application of law is reflective in the manner in which the case has gone. So anyone who can tell us what are the facts? Okay, we can start with what is the basic principle of common law for criminal liability on mens rea. You remember
Mens rea
that?
plus actus reus.
Yeah, but what is the phrase that you have to mug up? ये तो बिल्कुल by heart याद कर लेना आप लोगों के.
Actus non facit nisi mens nisi rea.
Very good. So this is the principle, and the controversy we are dealing with is that so there will be three scenarios in law. One scenario where the law specifically uses the term indicating mens rea. So not a problem, the principle applies. Then there will be specific sections in the law and special laws which will say mens rea not required. This section itself mentions that. Then the third scenario is where Mayor Hans George is situated. Third scenario is this section is just silent. So neither it says it is excluded nor it says it is included. So in those cases, how do we determine whether the absence of mens rea automatically means mens rea not required, or does it automatically means mens rea is still required because the principle of common law is that? That's the critical questions we will learn from this case. So who will tell us the facts of this case?
Ma'am, may I?
Yes, please.
The facts of the case. The appellant, who is the case name is
What's
Mayor
your name?
Hans George. I'm Rahul E.
What is your name?
Rahul E, ma'am. Rahul E.
Rahul. Okay, Rahul. Okay.
Case name Mayor Hans George with state of Maharashtra. This is an appeal in the Bombay High Court for the
If you put your video on, you will be on the recording. So let's have your face on. If you can, if you think your system permits you.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, one of the etiquettes of communication on e-platforms is to be aware of your lighting in the room. So lighting in Rahul's room is at the back of his head. So his head is coming out darker. Well, these are some things you have to learn over it, because by the time you will pass out, I'm quite sure hearings will be a lot more normalized by that time, despite the corona not being there by that time. So we need to learn how to communicate effectively on the e-platform. And first thing will have to be that you should be visible. So if you can move around and where the light is, put your face on that side. So the light should be facing you and should not be behind you. If you can't do that right now, don't worry. Tomorrow we can focus on that.
Okay.
Yeah, Rahul, go ahead.
Okay. Ma'am, case name Mayor Hans George, the state of Maharashtra. The facts of the case are described below. The appellant name Mayor Hans George was boarded from
Rahul, we don't want you to read them. Have you comprehended the facts? And tell us
Ma'am,
them
yes.
in your simple language. Suppose you were to
Okay.
tell the story of this case to your neighbor. How will you tell them?
Actually, I written like that only, like a note making.
Okay,
So
okay, read.
can you see that and read?
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I will say in a colloquial manner. The appellant is Mayor Hans George, his name. He was boarded from a airport which was in Switzerland. So he was boarded in November 27, 1962 to Manila, which is in Philippines, to the country. So that is a
What is the
true
date
flight, which-
again? What is
November
the date?
27, 1962, madam.
It's very important in this case. The date is very important.
Date is very
So
important.
you have to,
yes, ma'am.
everybody has to keep track of the date on which he boarded the plane. So 26 November 1960,
27, ma'am. 27.
27th November.
Yes, ma'am. It was actually halted in Bombay. The airport name is Santa Cruz Airport, something. It
Santa
was
Cruz.
halted in 28th November 1962, which was the after day of November 27. So
Right.
it was halted. So the plane was halted in Bombay. That was a through flight to from Switzerland to Philippines. So it was halted in Bombay. While the on the time of when the plane is stopped in Bombay, all of the passengers were in the lounge, like the through flight will have a passengers lounge, but the appellant was sitting inside the plane. The inside, when he was sitting inside the plane, the inspector of the customs were checking him. So he was not in the lounge, so they went to the plane and checked him. He was in the plane only. So they asked for the inspector, the inspector inspected him that he has some gold or not. He said, I don't have any. He told, no, I don't have any gold. But they
Rahul,
were
give me a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Rahul, hold on for a second. Everybody, please tell me whether you are hearing the grinding sound very loudly today.
No, ma'am.
You're not?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Then go ahead, because I can barely hear you people with so much noise in my background. Yeah, go ahead.
Inspected whether he have gold or not, but the appellant replied he don't have any gold. But the inspector suspected him and take him to the custom baggage check control checking room. So there the inspector, two inspectors inspected him that his jacket is actually customized in a manner where he can have more than 36 packets, like customized in a manner. He can put the gold inside his jacket, which is 28 compartments of 34 kilograms of gold inside his jacket. They found the gold inside his jacket. So after that, he was charged for bringing gold into the India without the permission of the government. Neither he informed the Reserve Bank or nor the government. So he was charged for this under the section 23 1A subclass A Foreign Exchange Regulation Act of 1947. And he also charged for another section 167 subclass 81 of the Sea Customs Act of 1878. So here in this case, it was actually trialed in a presidency court. The learned presidency judge magistrate held that the appellant must deemed to have knowledge of notification by the government. Actually, there was a notification by the Reserve Bank of India. There was a notification in November 8, 1962, and there was a succeeding notification by the same Reserve Bank, by the government in the official gazette in November 24. just I'm telling the facts here. There are defense and prosecution arguments are normally based on this notification only in this case. So I am telling the notification.
Notice, everybody notice, notification came in India on 24th November.
Yes, ma'am.
Of
The
that year.
succeeding notification of November 8th notification.
Yeah.
Ma'am, there was a notification in November 8. The November 24th notification is the succeeding notification, which is allowing like superseding the November 8th notification.
No, November 8th notification is of which year, Rahul?
Ma'am, 1962 itself, I think.
1962
itself, the same month, like they pronounced a notification of allowing gold in the transit manner, like through flight, the passengers can, like, they could carry something, but like special permission with the permission of the Reserve Bank, like they must get some permission to carry the gold in one notification. So after that, November 24th, they return gave a official gazette notification. So there are two notifications, I think, which actually I was confused in this notification only in the coming.
No, because the first notification is, I think, much earlier than this.
It was on August 25, 1948.
Checking the case
August.
again.
First 25th August 1948.
First notification was on, ma'am, August 25, 1948, which was
Because first
superseded.
notification is much earlier.
Yes, ma'am, which was
Actually, ma'am,
superseded by 24th November 1962 notification.
Precisely.
Yeah, correct. But the something, the November 8th notification is actually enacted, but it was published in November 24, I think.
Okay.
To the best of my
Post
knowledge.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah.
So he was charged for these two sections in the which was, I told, the act. For these two sections, the learned presidency magistrate held that appellant must deem to have the knowledge about those notifications. So he held that carrying gold is contrary to the terms of the Reserve Bank of India's notifications. So, and also he added, he held that he committed the offense of the above two sections, and he sentenced him for 1 year. So this is an appeal to the Bombay High Court regarding the presidency magistrate conviction and the sentence. That is the fact of this case.
Okay. So, briefly, yes.
Ma'am, I want to ask one thing. What is the presidency magistrate?
During the British period, we had these presidential towns. The magistrate in those places were known as the president.
So it's basically the sessions court.
I'm not very sure. I'm not very
It's
sure
way to
whether
go
it
down.
is exactly the same. But
The presidency court
it is at the district level, that much I can say. I will say it is at the
For
I think
only
it was like
Calcutta,
at that time it
Madras
was
and
Kolkata, Madras, and Bombay presidency at the time of independence. So after that, before after independence, the presidency existed for some time. So I think the case would be of that time only, when there was Bombay and Madras and Kolkata presidency existing.
Ma'am,
But the case is after 62.
ma'am, Rahul said this is the case in appeal to High Court, while the one that is given in our case material, it is an appeal to the Supreme Court.
yes, it is an appeal to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
It's a Supreme Court decision. So first of all, let's get the facts straight. The facts are that this man has been doing his business of smuggling gold for a long time. And at this point of time, he was flying from Switzerland to Philippines. This was a hopping flight with a stopover in India. The Indian law till 24th November 1962 permitted that this was legal in India. It was not smuggling in India. So there was no offense to stop over in India without declaring that you are carrying gold, as long as you're not embarking in India. So you were doing this business for a long time. So that year also, he left on 27. So 3 days after the notification, the law change in India. The law change in India on 24th said, now even if you are a passenger not getting down here, but you're passing through India, you must declare the gold. It is accepted fact that he did not know this. He was in ignorance of this law, right? The law said that if you do this, then you are liable. So technical question is that whether a person, the section is silent, whether he should intentionally be doing it, intentionally violating, not declaring, not knowing the law. When you do not know the law, you are not intentionally violating the law. You have no intention to violate the law, and this person had no intention to violate the law because he was acting as per his knowledge of the law in existence. This is not even the prosecution's case to say that he knew the change in the law. Yeah, so he doesn't have any guilty mind, the way we understand it, that he knew it is an offense and is still hiding. He's not doing that. He did not know that the law has changed. So now the small question for us is whether his case will be determined by reference to the common law principle of mens rea, or whether we can argue that because the section is silent on mens rea, it means mens rea not required. So if we say the interpretation of the section will be with mens rea, that mens rea must be required, then Mayor Hans George cannot be held guilty because he did not have mens rea. If we say that no, if the section is not specifically including the term, then mens rea is not required. So if there's no requirement mentioned in this section, so what is the notification? Can you locate the notification to tell us what did the notification say?
All the three notifications, ma'am, or 24th number one notification?
24th.
So, ma'am, this notification particularly said that so should I read also August 25 because it was superseding that?
If you can read the page, tell the page number, everybody can open the case law.
Okay, in page number, ma'am, it is page number first.
For me, it is page number 34.
Actually, I have printed material, so it in this page number is one only of the case.
Okay. So
Yes,
on
ma'am.
the e-copy, if you have the e-copy, it is page number 34, where the August 25, 1948 amendment is given, and the notification is given. And then there is the notification of November 8, 1962 on page 35. So in 1948, the law said, in exercise of the power conferred by the subsection 1 of section A of FERA, and in supersession of the notification of Government of India, the central government is pleased to direct that except with the general or special permission of the Reserve Bank, no person shall bring or send into India from any place out of India any gold coin, gold bullion, etc. The Reserve Bank of India the permission was given in the following terms. The Reserve Bank of India is hereby pleased to give general permission to the bringing or sending of any such gold or silver by sea or air, provided that the gold or silver is on through transit to a place which is outside India. So this is a permission that if you are going outside India, it is through transit, you are not getting down here, is outside both the territory of India and the Portuguese territories surrounded by it, and is not removed from the carrying ship or aircraft except for the purpose of transshipment. So this was whatever he did not get down from the plane. He was still sitting in the plane. So he has not violated any condition of this direction. Then November 8, 1962, in supersession of the said notification, the RBI gave the following notification, issued the following notification, November 24th, 1962. So this, lot of the notifications, they might be passed on an earlier date, which has happened in November 8th in this case, but they come into force when they're published in the official gazette. So they were published in the official gazette on November 24th. And there the direction now says, the RBI gives general permission to the bringing or sending of any of the following articles, namely, any gold coin, gold bullion, gold sheet, gold ingot, whether refined or not, into any port or place in India when such article is on through transit to a place which is outside the territory, provided that such article is not removed from the ship or conveyed in which it is being carried except for the purpose of transshipment, provided, this is the important part, provided further that it is declared in the manifest for transit as, say, bottom cargo or transshipment cargo. So this is the proviso which is in question today. So here, he could have taken that gold via India if he had declared in the manifest. When we do customs, you have to declare what are you taking, if there is any prohibited goods. So that if it is falling in the other the above mentioned categories, then it must be declared. He did not declare because he was still following the directions of the 1948 notification, which did not require him to declare anything. So now the question is whether this proviso can be attracted to a person who has not declared, not knowing this law. So one argument is always that ignorance of law is no excuse. So whether, if we say that ignorance of law is no excuse, then in all cases, you did not know this is the law. We had the recent case where on Ganga, one of the cricketers was boating and he was feeding the birds, which has now been penalized in Varanasi. He did not know. So the court, the police at that point of time said, I don't know what happened later on, that the cricketer will not be held because he did not know the law, but the boatman knew the law. He did not prevent the cricketer. So we will book the boatman. So that was not saying the cricketer will be liable because he did not know. So the whole point is that whether, okay, there are two things, one more thing one has to look at. What we know is that there's a parent legislation, FERA, for example, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act is the parent legislation. Every legislation has towards the end of the legislation a clause which gives rule-making power, that you can make sub-rules around this. So suppose it say that, okay, such and such person can be appointed. A superintendent can be, shall be appointed for every children home. Suppose this is the law in the parent legislation. So then what will be his qualifications, what will be the salary, what will be the tenure of service, terms and condition of service, all that will come under a notification under that law. So the notification, what we call as the subordinate legislation. So parent legislation is the basic statute, and then there is subordinate legislation. So the further argument in the case has been that whether the principle of ignorance of law, we know it applies, but whether it applies to only the parent legislation or the notifications also. So there are a number of arguments on this aspect. So one is that the section is not saying anything. Does it say whether the notification we read, does it mention anything about mens rea? I'll put it on the sharing and then you can see. Have you found your case law?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can read that. Can you read this? The proviso which is in question. So when you read it only, it says, provided that it is declared. So whether there's no mention, there's no word in this notification which can indicate the mental, what is the mental state of the person who violates this law. The combined effect of the terms of the section and the notification may be stated thus. No gold can be brought in or sent to India, though it is on through transit to a place which is outside India, except the general or special permission of RBI. Till November 24th, 1962, under the general permission, such gold could be brought in or sent to India if it was not removed from the ship or aircraft, except for the purpose of transshipment. Transshipment means that if you have sometime on the hop over, you must have experienced this. Sometime you need to change the plane. Sometime, if you are going forward, I'm going from here to Kashmir, for example, then it is the hopping is in Chandigarh. I will not be getting out of the plane. I will keep sitting there. So from here to Maharashtra via somewhere. So I will not get down. But sometime I'm going from here to US, I will change my planes in London. So that is what is transshipment is. But from the date of, so if it is, it is not getting down here, but because of the change in the plane, it has been changed, but otherwise it is not removed from the ship. But from the date another condition was imposed thereon, namely that such coal shall be declared in the manifest transit as same bottom cargo or transshipment cargo. So one has to also understand this terminology, same bottom cargo or transshipment cargo. Same bottom cargo is the thing which you are carrying on person, and transshipment cargo is which you give check-in baggage. So they're saying that whether it is same bottom cargo or transshipment cargo, you have to declare it. And the terminology here is, bottom cargo or transshipment cargo. So whether, so this is the requirement. Now, on this one, the important question is that what is the liability of this person? So what do you think? Should he be held liable, not held liable? What will be the benefits? Because we can answer the question, because the law is vague on this one, that if a section is silent, then what should we do? So our arguments have to come from the perspective that what will be the benefits to punish a person who has no intention to commit an offense. Why do we punish people? Because they were intending and they have violated the law. But if I did not know that it was a violation of the law, then you are not preventing people to not violate the law, because if they do not know the law, how will they violate? How will they have the intention to violate? So mere violation of law is not punishable, but violation with the intention to violate is permissible. So what will be the benefit we will arrive at by punishing people who did not know the law? So take a very extreme case.
Ma'am, there is a maximum.
We have just 1 second, Nirupa. We have a law called POCSO, Protection of Children Against Sexual Offences Act, which says having any sexual relationship, whether of touching, etc., or whether of penetrative sexual intercourse, it is an offense. So there was a young girl and a young boy who were in love, and they were having sex together voluntarily. And then it turned out the girl was under the age of 18. Now, should this boy be punished? Because law merely says whoever had sexual intercourse with a child below the age of 18. It does not say forcible, without consent, against her will, nothing of that is there. It's just that. So should this boy of 19 years be held liable? He thought, in fact, today's newspaper only, I think, have this kind of a case where the boy had a sexual relationship with the girl, and he has been now produced before the court for the offense of rape. The girl had a Facebook account. And his understanding is that you cannot have an independent Facebook account unless you're 18 years of age. So the girl must have said, I'm 18 years and plus. He believed her to be above 18 years, but she turned out to be just 13 years old. So he's saying that it was consensual, and I believe that she was above 18. So should this boy be punished for the offense of rape? And it's called statutory rape. Sorry?
You are saying two different things. You're saying first that it was a rape, and then you are saying that it was consensual. How is that possible?
No, because we have something, a term called statutory rape. So consent of a person above age of 18 counts. the consent of a person below the age of 18 is of no value. When you see all these shows, no, India's dancers and best singers and all that, lots of children participate. So if they go with the producer, suppose there's a very good singer and the producer says, I will give you an album, come with me to Bombay, and the child goes, it amounts to kidnapping. Child's opinion below the age of 18 has got no validity in law. It is the guardian's permission which is required in such cases. So any person who is having sexual relationship with a child below the age of 18 will be held liable for rape, even though it is consensual, because it is a statutory definition. So there's the same thing that if in this case, and we have been holding boys liable, usually boys, but of course we have been arguing as an academic that should be girls also. If vice versa happen, the girl is 19, the boy is 17, the girl will be held liable for rape, statutory rape. And the terminology used in POCSO, Protection of Children Against Sexual Offences Act, uses the term not rape, but penetrative sexual assault. So we'll come to that when we come to that offense. But I was using this example to say that this is an example where the young boy and girl were in love. They had consensual sex. But the law says, irrespective of your knowledge, irrespective of the consent of the girl, you will be held liable for the offense of rape because you are an adult. So do you think it is just?
Ma'am, it is because the guy should have at least asked her age. It was all the fault on his part. I mean, they
Why
had
do you
sex,
think
so
so?
they
No.
should have no.
But whether his presumption that if she has an independent Facebook account in her own name, she is declaring herself to be above 18.
There is no such a declaration in Facebook. I'm using Facebook since I was 12 or 11. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no such thing. He's
Okay.
presuming
We can
So
declare our
let's
date of
let's
birth in Facebook,
let's assume. Sorry.
Actually, there is a declaration over there, but it is not really taken serious by anyone using it.
I think there is a declaration, but anyway, let's assume that he genuinely believed. And we've got lots of cases like that, where the accused person genuinely believed. We're only drawing a simile, but we want to come back to the same question, Mayor Hans George, that this man, it is accepted that he did not know that he needs to declare. So the law is saying, the first notification said you cannot take gold, etc. in India. And then there's an exception. Exception was that if you're not bringing it in India, you are just transiting passenger, you can take it. Then India was not bothered. But later on, the problem of smuggling was accepted as an international problem. It's a transnational problem. And therefore, every country was bringing their laws in accordance with, they were joining in the effort of preventing smuggling. So therefore, India also brought this notification saying that no, first is there's a prohibition. The exception was that you can do so if you're just transiting and not getting down in India. Then the proviso was added that you can still do it, but provided you have declared it. So this man left Zurich 3 days later. He had no means of knowing also this notification which came in the Indian Gazette. He had no actual knowledge also. He didn't have the occasion and he did not have actual knowledge, and the prosecution is also not saying that he knew it. So when the police asked him, are you carrying any gold on your person? And he said, no, I'm not. So whether the accused person was duty bound to tell the truth to these officers, that no, I'm carrying, but I'm not declared, but he did not know. He was not supposed to declare also. He was not required to declare.
Because
So
he
that's
is
one
carrying
part.
in person only, no, ma'am.
Sorry?
Ma'am, but
He is
even
carrying in person, no, there is no need to declare that he is carrying in individual things. When it is
Yeah,
in
no,
luggage or
that's
anywhere, we have to declare.
No, that's the technical argument being said that whether the prohibition applied only to the check-in cargo or did it apply to the things which have been taken on person?
Okay.
That's also one of the contentions in the case.
Ma'am, but regardless of anything, at the end, when he said that he did not have any gold and he was caught with 34 kilos of gold,
Hmm.
isn't that showing us that he has some mens rea relating to the fact that he lied about it?
Yeah,
Ma'am,
but telling a lie is not an offense, no, in all circumstances, unless you have a legal obligation to tell the truth.
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, the thing is like he is inside the plane only, na, ma'am. If he have
Yeah.
the malicious intention to degrade or to falsify the government, so then he will come outside the plane and he will do such
No,
activities
no,
where
no,
he
no.
can
Look, look,
smuggle.
look. No mens rea is being alleged at all. The prosecution itself is agreeing that he had no intention to violate Indian law
Okay.
because he did not know the law has changed in 3 days before his departure. And this is something he has been doing for a long time because this was permissible since 1948. So from 1948 to 1962, what he was doing in India was lawful. We are not bothered about whether it was lawful in Zurich or whether it was lawful in Manila. We are only concerned whether what he was doing is lawful in India. So what he was doing, exactly the same thing, if he had done 5 days ago, he would not have been charged because the law permitted. Now we have a technical requirement. There's nothing inherently wrong or right about carrying gold on your person. Because when we say that there are two kinds of wrongs, one we call as the inherently bad activities. In mala in se, inherently there is the possibility of harm. So we say rape, murder, theft are the categories falling there. Then we have the other category of offenses, which we call as mala in prohibition. So there is a technical law. There is no morality involved in that. They have been prohibited. So, for example, when there is a paucity of, when we had Corona lockdown, so suddenly in America we found that all the tissue papers, toilet tissue paper was gone. People were hoarding. In India, when we had famine, people were holding grains. So the law came saying that no, you cannot hoard more than 100 kg of grains without the license. So a lot of things you cannot do it without a license. So if there is, yesterday we said there was license required, today we said no license required, or vice versa. So the policies about lots of things keep changing, and these are technical offenses in a sense. Walking on the left, right, on the left side of the road is a law in India. In America, it is walking on the right side. So there is no morality involved whether it is moral to walk on the left or right. It is just a technical law. So if you do not know that law and you violate that law, whether you should be held liable without knowing the law, whether the criminal liability should be imposed on you, even though you did not know the law, there is no morality involved. In case of one of the earlier cases of rape, R versus Phillips, the boy thought the boy did ask the girl, how old are you? And she was above 18. I think she was, at that time, 16 was the age which was required. Whatever, suppose let's say 18. So the girl said she was above 18. She looked to be above 18, but she turned out to be less than 18. So he went away with the girl. And the question was whether he should be held liable because he did not know. He had actually asked the girl whether she was above 18, and she said, yes, I'm above 18. So the judge said that what he was doing was an immoral act. Because at that time in England, taking a girl without the permission of her parents was seen as an immoral activity. So it says if you are doing a girl of even a major, even an older girl. So if you're doing an immoral act and that turns out to be illegal also, you will be held liable. That's one of the reasoning given by the judges was for convicting him. So this one does not fall even in that category. There is no morality involved whether to carry gold or not to carry gold. It's a technical requirement of the countries. And different countries may say different things. Some say you can take 10 tolas. Some will say only 1 tola you can take. So that's a country to country law. So in this case, what will be the benefits that the criminal justice system will acquire by punishing a person like that? That's a policy question, because that will only give us an answer, and that's how the judges have approached. So let me share you with the slide and some of the points that we want to make in this case.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yes, please. I can barely hear you though. Speak loudly.
Am I audible?
Very light voice.
Ma'am, when a girl and boy both are minor,
You write down your question. I can't hear. I know you are asking something, but I can't hear you properly. This is just a revision. Actus non facit ream, nisi mens et rea is the basic principle. And this is the range of state of mind. This is also again what we have already looked at. Volition, intention, motive. What is relevant is intention, excepting for certain cases and motive. So the question is, if the prohibited act is done without intention of committing the crime, can or should a person be held liable? This is what we are dealing in State of Maharashtra versus Mayor Hans George. So original notification permitted transit passenger to carry gold without declaration if they were a transit passenger. This was superseded on 24/11/1962. Mayor Hans George arrived on 28th with gold concealed on his person en route to Manila, and he did not know of the new notification. These are the contentions. Which side do you think are the contentions? Who is arguing this? Mens rea is essential ingredient, and accused did not bring the gold knowingly.
The respondent.
No, not in this case. Mayor Hans George.
Yeah, Mayor George. Yeah.
It is the defense. It's the defense arguments.
Yeah, defendant. Sorry.
So you're saying that mens rea is essential because of the common law principle. And in this case, he did not have the knowledge, and he was not bringing the gold knowingly that it is prohibited without a declaration. The notification is a subordinate legislation, and it is not, the argument is that it cannot be enforced against a person who has not been specifically told about it. And the notification applies to same bottom cargo, which is saying is the same as the one which is the check-in baggage, and not to gold on person. So when it says same bottom cargo or transshipment cargo, it is the same term. So whether it is remain in the same cargo or it will be transferred to another one. So same cargo, bottom cargo wasn't the person, it is on the bottom cargo. Bottom cargo is that it goes in the base of the plane. And transshipment when it will be changed from one plane to the other. But on both the cases, this is referring to the check-in baggage, and it is not talking about the gold on the person. So majority has convicted. What do you think they would have said in answer to these questions? Anyone who knows what has the majority said in response to these contentions on the defense side?
Ma'am, means ignorance of law is not an excuse now, ma'am. Even though he don't have the time, just 1 or 2 days before he boarded, after he boarded, before the notification, he could have checked in the Switzerland airport when he is boarding. He might check what is the recent notification or what is the gazette is telling, Indian gazette. He know that this is a through flight, so he could have checked what is the official notifications are going on, what is the law regarding this goals, or what is the contemporary things that is going in India. He know that he is going through India. So he have 3 days of time. Actually speaking, he have 3 days or 4 days of time after the notification. So in the airport itself, he could have checked whether is there any new law or notification is going, is bringing up in India or not. So,
you know, one day, one time I was returning back from US to India. And my changeover was in Amsterdam. And from Amsterdam, I also come to India. So I thought that, okay, I was trying to save money because this was a paid ticket. So I said I can take a day tour, and I had some work in Poland. So I'll kind of take off from there. So I booked my tickets on a local domestic flights from Amsterdam to England and back to Amsterdam. I checked all the possible sites to see what are the terms and conditions, and I found that everything was in order. So I bought that ticket. When I reached Amsterdam, I learned that I was traveling on an international air carrier, and my ticket was now on a cheap carrier, domestic cheap carrier. And they had no agreement with each other, whereby the personnel of the international carrier will do the transshipment of my baggage to the domestic carrier. And domestic carrier certainly doesn't have the personnel who will transfer my bags. I had no visa to enter the customs department. No, I could not cross the custom. My bag is behind the custom. So they said, sorry, we cannot pick up your bag because no, they might be lying there, but we cannot pick it up. The two airlines do not have a contract, and there was nothing on the net which showed me that, which prepared me for that emergency. So it is not, it made, so for me, ultimately I had to find some way, and I got it because some policemen did agree to help me out. That was a person-to-person helping nature, but nothing to do with the law. To think that a notification published in Indian Gazette 3 days ago will be available. We're talking which year? 1962. We had no internet.
Ma'am, but there might be the airlines, the airport will have the facility to see the gazettes, na ma'am. Like they don't have the internet.
How will they have in 1962? Was there any internet? How will a publication in India will reach Zurich?
So this might be an argument.
No, this cannot be an argument because there was no physical possibility of it reaching the Zurich airport. And this has not been even argued in the case. Yeah, but today's world, we will certainly want to argue that. No, today, certainly there are a lot more options available to locate a law. And therefore, we say that, okay, you have to, if you're doing something which on the face of it, carrying such a huge amount of gold, it certainly shows that something is fishy. It is not all personal baggage and all. When, we kind of cross customs with 50 laptops, certainly we know that there's something, we need to check out what is permissible. So, okay, the majority has convicted, and they have given these reasons for them. The term used in contradiction with personal baggage, carried for personal use. So then say that when same bottom cargo is referring to the personal baggage which is carried for personal use. So if he was carrying a gold chain on his person, you need not declare. But the baggage he is carrying is not for personal use. Certainly these many bars of gold is not for personal use. And they further say that mens rea, they agree that common law principle is true, that mens rea is an essential ingredient in all cases. But it can be displaced if they are excluded explicitly. The second one is where we are pegged at, because there was no explicit exclusion or by necessary implication. So for deciding whether mens rea in this case is excluded or not, the test is whether exclusion will facilitate implementation. So if we say that all those persons who did not know that carrying gold without declaring is punishable, whether not punishing them will facilitate implementation or punishing them will facilitate implementation. So what is the reason why we have the anti-smuggling laws? Because it affects the economy of the country. Various countries involved, transnational countries. And therefore, the exclusion means that if we say that no, you will be held liable even if you had no intention, it will ensure the better economic health of the country. So that is my purpose. I should not think of whether he intended to commit the offense or not. It is enough that he has committed the offense. And the counter argument was that bringing has to, it may happen sometime that a plane was flying from India to Pakistan with no intention of having to land in Afghanistan. From here to England, and there was no intention to drop down at Pakistan or in Afghanistan. But because of an emergency, this person lands, this plane lands, and there's a person who is carrying this gold contrary to the law. So in that case, the judge said it is not a voluntary act. So if a person, suppose he had the route was straight from Zurich to Manila. There was no landing required in India. So certainly he will not declare. But if because of some emergency on the plane, the plane landed in Delhi, will this person in similar circumstances be held liable? So they said, no, that is a distinguishable category. He will not be held liable because in that case, he has not voluntarily brought. But in our present case, he knew that the plane will land at Bombay. And he very well knew that there's no, and he is carrying the gold voluntarily. So if it's a voluntary act and the bringing of the gold, in this case, is a voluntary bringing, and therefore he will be held liable. Section 8, the language is not saying everybody is permitted, but if you carry gold of more than a certain quantity, then it will be prohibited. What the earlier said, you can carry up to 5 tolas without declaring. Above that, you should declare. Then it was reduced to 2. So whether the law, section 8 of FERA, is saying that it is permitted, and then there are exceptions, that if you are carrying less than this amount, then no problem. But it is contrary, it is reverse. The language of the section says nobody can carry gold. Then there's an exception that if you are, even in the 1948 notification, the prohibition was absolute. An exception was that if you are a transit passenger, you can carry. But otherwise, there was a clear prohibition you cannot bring. So it is not a case where there was a general prohibition and then there was a general permission and prohibition was exception. But it is the reverse case. So the prohibition is absolute and then there are exceptions. So which is to be understood differently. And then they have referred to precedent saying that no, those cases are, the cases which we are referring to are a different category. So then they say that subordinate legislations are of 2 kinds, because the whole issue was whether the subordinate legislation, if he did not know, and unless it has been brought to his knowledge, he cannot be held liable. These are the 2 kinds, one which is saying general orders, and then Mr. XYZ are not permitted to come to India. Persona non grata notification nikalti hai, where we say such and such person, everybody else can come, but this person cannot come to the faculty because he has been doing some unlawful activities on the campus. So this notice must be brought to his knowledge because it is not a general order, it's a specific to the person concerned. So in this case, the prohibition was general. It was not that only Mayor Hans George and another 12 people are not permitted, everybody else can do that. They said that the requirement of bringing it to the notice of the specific person is only when the notification is specific and not general. The minority has dismissed the appeal. And what are they saying? Usually applies to unaccompanied baggage, but may include accompanied baggage also. To that extent, they are agreeing that it can include, generally it is the unaccompanied, the check-in baggage, but it can also include sometime. They also agree with the mens rea principle, that common law principle, which says without mens rea you cannot be held liable. We also agree with that. So there is no distinction on that one. The mere welfare purpose of the act does not exclude mens rea. So the other principle we are learning, that merely because a legislation is a welfare legislation, that itself is not sufficient to exclude mens rea. Then they are saying further, what is the test? In addition, we have to add that apart from it being a welfare purpose, welfare legislation, we also have to ask the question if strict liability helps the state in the enforcement of the law. So you find that the two judges, minority and majority, two sets of judges, are agreeing on the legal provisions. What they're differing on is that whether in this case, punishing this man will facilitate enforcement. So they're not disagreeing with the principle. The principle is the same. And they're saying that there is this Burmese case, Lemchek N, where it was said that there was a list of persons who were declared to be persona non grata. And Lemchek N was one of them. He said, this has not been brought to my knowledge. And the judges agreed with this principle. So they said that this is the case which has been used by the defense to say, look, we already have a Singapore case. It's a Privy Council decision. And when we were under the colony rule, Privy Council was the highest authority. And we've been looking at the jurisdictions within the common law system to get strengths that whether we are, this can help us determine. So this case was quoted and accepted by the minority judge, quoted by the defense counsel, and accepted by the minority judge. In this case, the general statement was that people with people generally of the origin of Burma, they can come back. But list of people were declared who cannot return. So he did not know there was a prohibition against his returning. He returned and he was caught. So his argument was that I did not know the law and it is a subordinate legislation. It was not brought to my knowledge. And the judge said, yes, you cannot be held liable. So this was the precedent which was being relied on by the defense and by the minority judge also. The majority judge said that this is a distinguishable category because in this one, there was a general permission and certain specific people were excluded. So when it is a specific direction, then it is okay to say that he should have been informed. But in our case, it's a reverse case. Ours is a case where there is a general prohibition and then there is an exception. So here it was a general permission and then exception, so which is a distinguishable category. Prohibition under the notification was not absolute, and it permitted our legislation. It said that the prohibition about carrying gold was not absolute. So here there is a difference of opinion among the two sets of judges. While the majority said that the prohibition, the starting line is that nobody is permitted to bring gold in India, and therefore it is absolute. But here the minority is saying that no, the law did not provide for absolute prohibition, but it said, because it said that you can carry gold provided you have declared the gold. So that's the only difference in the two categories. And with this one, we have covered the primary arguments in the case. So now the question for us is, so let's stop sharing this. So Ankit is saying he is guilty on technical points. Law is about technicalities only, because having sex with a person is not an offense if unless you are prove that it was without consent, with against her will. So it's all technicality part. It's not that you cannot have sex with people, but you can have it only in certain circumstances. So it is the
Ma'am,
technicality. But
don't you
here,
think
yeah,
the fact that he was carrying 34 kgs and not something for personal use, he is doing something which is out of nominality?
but listen, 5 days ago, there was nothing wrong, na? If he had gone through the same thing, the same 34 kgs 4 days ago, he would not have been held liable. And he was not carrying those 34 kgs even 5 days ago on his 2 previous trips for his personal use. But he was also not violating the law of the country. He's not claiming that I'm carrying it for my personal use. He's just saying that I had no intention to violate the law of India. I did not know your law has changed. And I have been doing it earlier. I have done it on 2 earlier occasions also. Nobody stopped me. Nobody said I was doing anything wrong by carrying this much of gold. So he has been in that sense trapped because somebody certainly knew that he's carrying this gold. The custom department had information beforehand.
Yeah.
That is why they caught on him. So yes, technically has committed the offense. But whether in all cases when people technically commit an offense. So let's go back to the Ganga incidents, Ganga boating and feeding the birds incident. Do you think the law only says whoever feeds birds on Ganges during this point of time? Because this notification had come in view of the bird flu. So with that in view, the notification came in that area. Now our cricketer did not know. So should he be held liable or not for feeding the birds, not knowing the notification? So as we were saying that he should have checked. No, he should have checked whether any change has happened. Was there any reason for him to believe that change? He should check.
Isn't
So
there
the
an
same way, whether this cricketer should have checked whether feeding the birds is legal or not legal.
But the fact that the boatman knew while he was feeding the bird, why didn't he tell him that it is not allowed?
But the boatman was not feeding the birds. It was the cricketer who was feeding the birds.
So, ma'am, similarly, we could also say that when we're talking about the gold incident, somebody told him that since we can say it in a way where you did not know this and you can get 34 kgs. It could also be an act of
No. In this case, look, here it is not, no, the prosecution is not saying, even the prosecution is not saying that he is feigning. He knew it was unlawful and he was still doing it. When the prosecution is agreeing that no, he did not know. He's an innocent victim of the law. He's become an accused because he did not know the law.
There a maxim which says that ignorantia fact excuseat, ignorantia juris non excuseat, which means that he can't just go ahead and say, no, I didn't know what was the law at that point of time. He'll go and kill someone and said, I didn't knew that was the law of India to punish whoever.
No, that's where that's where the classification, when we say mala in se and mala in prohibition. So there are certain areas where people without knowing the law would know that it is wrong or it may be wrong. So when the young man took the girl without the permission of the parents, and that time the law did not say that you cannot take a girl above the age of 18 without the girl's parents' permission. The law did not say that. But the society expected that he should take the permission of the parents. So when he did not take the permission, he was doing an immoral act. And he knew it was an immoral act. He did not know that actually it turned out to be an illegal act also. So when it comes to killing somebody, Listen, killing also, when we say killing another human being, usually is classified as a category in mala in se. That is inherently wrong. But we do know that we have permitted death penalty as a punishment. That is intentional killing of another one pursuant to a judicial order. But the ingredient of the offense of murder are there. The hangman, with the intention to kill, kills. He's protected because there's a judicial direction to that effect. Or when we train our soldiers to kill on the borders to defend our country, we permit them. We permit people to kill even in private defense. That when it comes to your safety and the safety of another person, your safety is more important. So even in the intentional killing scenario, we have created exceptions. So even though at one level we say killing is mala in se, we do know that our legal system does permit intentional killing in specified circumstances. So that, in that sense, there is nothing in the world which will fall absolutely that across time and space, it will be mala in se. When you look at the, I think 18th century Europe, they had this law which said that if two men wanted to have the affection of a same woman, then they could have a duel. Duel had certain rules that they should have similar weapon, they should have similar kind of opportunity to defend and the attack others else. There will be a witness to their duel. So they will appoint a place where these two will fight, and whoever survives will take the girl. So duel permitted you to kill legitimately your rival over a girl. Girl's opinion was of no consequence. So we have found that killing at different places at different times have been permitted. India permits death penalty. Some countries do not. So therefore, even though at one level we agree that killing another human being, we'll say without any justification. But every offender has some justification. Oh, he had killed my father, he had molested my sister, he had done this to me. Therefore, I have a reason. There's a personal reason. But in the state policy, we think this is a state policy scenario where it is permitted. So when you take the example of that, so anybody will take the plea that no, I did not know killing was an offense, then it is stretching it too much. But it is possible for the cricketer to say, you know, feeding the birds has been a common practice on different places in Delhi. So many people feed the pigeons. Every nook and corner you find them, and then suddenly one day the government brings a notification. So everybody, just 1 second. Instead of silencing, putting myself on mute, I disconnected. So, okay, returning to where we were. What were we talking about?
That knowledge to that person, for example, boatman, about change in the law. You were saying something about that.
Everybody who's feeding the pigeon then will be held liable because the notification says no, from tomorrow onwards you will not feed the pigeons anymore because there's a bird flu. So when you, so there's nothing inherently wrong. Actually, it is seen as a good thing to do to feed birds. So when you make feeding the birds as an offense, It is not at the same category as killing another human being. And so you will have to make that distinction. Now, there are certain categories of offenses or activities which are very contentious, whether it is mala in se or whether it is mala in prohibition. For example, prostitution, and what we call today is the sex work. Because when we say prostitution, we were talking about very negative connotation to the woman who does the sex work. Today, the sex workers are claiming that their work is like any other work, and there cannot be no moral baggage with it. So some countries prohibit it, some countries permit and regulate it, some countries permit but not regulate. Where do you think India falls? Whether prostitution or sex work in India, prohibited or not prohibited? Is it a crime or not a crime?
It is not prohibited.
Say it again.
Permitted but not regulated.
But regulated, ma'am.
What is the regulation?
Ma'am, if we talk in the sense of constitution, the constraint of morality, ma'am.
No,
Like,
no.
ma'am, the
Crime,
freedom
we
of
said
speech,
crime in the word offense. The word offense, we said, is an act which is declared to be an offense by the state. So whether prostitution is an offense in India.
Ma'am, prostitution is not an offense.
not an
Ma'am, it
offense.
is legal in India.
It's legal.
Yeah, it is legal but I don't think it's legal in the whole sense. There are some provisions to it as to what is legal and what is
Yeah,
not.
no, the
Anything is
prostitution per se is not prohibited,
Yeah.
but soliciting for prohibition, the prostitution, living on the earning of prostitution, renting out a property for prostitution, all that is prohibited. So
Yeah.
anything which will facilitate the sex work is prohibited, but the sex work itself is not prohibited. So trafficking for prostitution is prohibited. So all the exploitative nature are prohibited, as well as facilitative nature, things which will support. How do you promote your business? Through advertisements? They cannot do that. They cannot put a board out there. So they cannot have agents. So all that is prohibited. So everything surrounding it. So whether this permission and the prohibition on the activities connected with prostitution, whether they are mala in se or mala in prohibition, whether the sex work, should it be prohibited because it is mala in se, or whether it should fall in the category called mala in prohibition.
And what is the difference between the two?
The one is saying that this activity is bad, it is immoral, it should be illegal across the countries and across the times. And mala and prohibition are seen as instances where it is a technical category. So usually we said that, started with saying that when we talked about wrongs, there were two categories of wrongs. Certain categories we said these are criminal wrongs, and there are other categories which are civil wrongs. And the broad category classification has been that civil wrongs are primarily those circumstances where the law assumes that the harm is caused by one party to another party. These are individualized categories. But the categories of actions which will impact the whole neighborhood, the whole country, the whole society, which will have a wider ramifications, will have wider adverse effects, those activities are classified as crimes. Contentious, but theoretically this is the rationale. So then the categories which are to be declared as an offenses, one position is that there will be certain activities which will be made offenses in all countries. So is there a country which makes killing another human being with the intention to kill not an offense? Every country in the world makes it. There are exceptions to it, a different thing. But the general principle is that if you kill another person with intention to kill, it is a punishable offense. And this has been an offense across centuries, across countries. So ordinarily, this is taken as an example of mala in se, M-A-L-A mala, I-N-N and S-E se, mala in se. Then there are the requirements of specific places and time. So if you're famine, then you will say, or we have we had this corona lockup. So it is right to say that essential activities will still be done. Essential commodities cannot be hoarded. They have to be made available. So this is the requirement of a time and a place. A lot of countries did not put a lockdown. Some countries put a lockdown. In Delhi, we have this now law which says that if you go out without a mask on, ₹2,000 fine. So there's nothing inherently right or wrong about it, but it is the demand of the time and place that this law has been brought in. This offense has been created. These are four categories of mala prohibition. These are prohibited activities. That's it. So when we are talking about prostitution, this is the ambiguous category. Some people say that this is an inherently wrongful activity because it ordinarily is caused by exploiting the women, poor women. This is usually taken by poor women, and therefore this should be prohibited in all cases. This should not be permitted. Others say that if people can use their body assets, if you have a good voice, you can become a singer. So if you have a good body, why should I not be permitted? That's a woman's argument, the sex workers' arguments, that if this is the only asset I have, my freedom of trade and business allows me to use whatever I have. So if my body is saleable and I can get my money out of that, why should I not be permitted to do that? So this is just a technical category and you have put a lot of moral baggage to it. There's a lot of debate around that area, but this is an area which is seen as not very sure whether it falls in mala in prohibition or whether it is mala in se. But the other offenses, you require license for distributing liquor. In prohibition, when you say you cannot give liquor to a person below the age of 18, some countries, some places say 18, some say 21, some say 25. Delhi had 25 as the cutoff age for offering liquor to a young person. So there's nothing inherently right or wrong, whether it is the age of 25, which is appropriate, or age of 18, which is appropriate. So these are categories called mala in prohibition. So mala in say category of offenses, people are not permitted usually to take the plea of that I did not know the law. But the cases, offenses of which may be argued to be falling within the category of mala in prohibition, the whole point is that should these persons who are committing offenses which is falling in this category of mala in prohibition, should they be held liable without having the intention or knowledge to commit the crime, of committing the crime. So when come back to Ganga and feeding of the birds, we know the principle now given in Mayor Hans George. What does Mayor Hans George say? That we have to look at the purpose of the legislation. So one, it should be a social welfare legislation. But that itself is not enough. We should further ask ourselves whether excluding mens rea or including mens rea will facilitate the implementation of the law. So we will have to look at the purpose of the law. What is the malady? What is the harm which the law is trying to prevent? So if we say that if people will not be convicted because they did not know the law, will it frustrate the purpose of the law? Or it will facilitate, it will not make any impact. So what is the purpose of prohibiting people to feed the birds on the Ganga river during this time? the harm that the birds might infect the human beings. They can infect the other people also. We do not other birds as well. The infection will spread, and it's a very strong. It's a very, what do you call that, serious infection. Thousands of birds have been killed after that.
How
So
can birds
whether
infect someone? I mean, how can they infect someone with a disease? Do
no,
people eat
because
birds?
no. When in Delhi we had some birds, so you are not supposed to even touch those birds because the virus, the infection the birds were carrying, and the birds could spread the germs through the flapping of their wings. So,
And
and that
birds are too smart to be touched. I mean, no, they'll fly as soon as we get near them. So there's no such point that they can infect
no.
us.
In this case, it was no. I do not know, the full medical scenario, but I know newspapers told us that you could get infected with the bird flu if you were within the air they emit through flapping. You can get that virus.
Also, why will the birds fly if you are feeding them?
Yeah, and you know this is kind of, and once we know that, look at the coronavirus infections. We could, it was not
Birds
that
can
only
sit
the,
on our clothes.
initially we said the persons who were infected, they should be wearing masks. Then we said the other person should also, both of them. Then we said, somebody wrote down that you should have 95 N95 mask. Somebody said, no, you should have the surgical mask. So all this was happening as the knowledge on the subject was developing. And this was changing from day to day. So if you did not know that the law has changed, that no, you should not be wearing, now it is no more the surgical mask, you should be having the 3-layered mask. You did not know, you go out on the road. So punishing you for doing that, whether it will facilitate the purpose of the law, implementation of the law, or will it frustrate the purpose of the law? That's the test. And we are trying to apply this test, taking up these examples. Because these are the examples where we are agreeing that the accused person did not know the law, that there was a prohibition. And it is a mala in prohibition category. The law is silent that you should not feed the bird knowingly that it is against the law. This is not what this says, that you are knowingly feeding the infected birds. That's not the law. So there is no indication of the mens rea required. If mens rea is not there, does it mean that merely because you're feeding the birds, now there you will be held liable? Or does it mean that you knew that it is prohibited and you're still doing it, only then you will be liable? That's the question. And how do you answer that question is what we need to learn. What is the test you will apply? So what do you think? Whether the law which has been made to protect human beings from getting infected by the birds flapping, and suppose that is the purpose. So whether that purpose will be frustrated if you said only those people will be punished who knew that it is prohibited and they're still doing it. But those persons who did not know the law, that it was prohibited, and they were feeding, they will not be permitted, they will not be punished. So whether that will frustrate the purpose of the law or will that facilitate the purpose of the law?
It will regulate the process of the law. I'll give you an example. There was a time when plastic was banned in our state, and still everyone was using it. One day, police came and raided a shop and charged them 3 lakh rupees or something. And, he gave the same argument that he didn't knew anything about this, but it was not heard at all, and he had to give the fine, and that created a fear, and nobody after that sold a plastic bag ever after gave it to a customer. So it creates fear in the minds of those who the successors who might do it, and yeah, it helps a lot.
That is kind of secondary argument, that high punishment for the offense has led to the consequence. Suppose he was said, okay, you will be charged 100 rupees. And he also did not know this. Suppose the fine was only 100 rupees instead of 3 lakhs. The fact that he was charged 100 rupees, it would not have had the same impact. There are two things involved here. One, the lesson people learned was not knowing the law will not excuse you. And not knowing the law, you will be still subjected to a very heavy penalty. Both the things played a part in that category. So going back to the question that whether it was justified to punish this man for violating the law when he did not know that the bags he has in his shop are less than the micron, the thickness of the plastic which was permitted. I do not know whether because in Delhi they had this distinction that you can have plastic bags of a certain thickness, but not less than that. I don't, which state you come from?
Ma'am, Jharkhand, Ranchi.
So Jharkhand, what was the law? Whether it says no plastic at all, or did it say plastic of a certain thickness?
No, ma'am, no plastic at all. They came up with something, cotton, whatever it was, some plant starch or something. They made poly bags out of it, and plastic was completely banned over there.
Okay. So, but in Delhi, we have this that bags of a certain thickness were permitted and bags below that thickness were not permitted. Then if the shopkeeper says, oh, I did not know, I know that this is not permitted, but there was a mistake of fact that the bags I have are less than the permitted micron thickness, that I do not know. So that's a distinguishable category. But going back to the Jharkhand example, it's a good example. Whether punishing the person, so the purpose was to make the city plasticless. Whether that purpose will be promoted by punishing even those persons who did not know there was a ban, or whether it will frustrate the purpose of the law if we say, okay, if you did not know, we will not punish you. If you knew, then we will punish you. And we're not onto the question of evidence. We're not saying that everybody will start taking the plea that I did not know. We're not onto that argument. We're saying it is proven that this shopkeeper did not know. So if he did not know, whether punishing him will promote the law, or whether not punishing him will promote the law.
Punishing him with minor, for example, for very less amount that he could bear also, or he could get a lesson also. That would be much better, I think.
No, punishment is, there are two stages in criminal liability. One stage is, are you liable or you're not liable? The second one is, if you are liable, then what should be the punishment? And the fact that there is a punishment of a certain level cannot determine whether I'm liable or not. These are two independent questions. In fact, in the controversial case from Nagpur bench, the skin-to-skin contact thing, and 3 other cases she has decided after that. In each one, they says that the punishment is very harsh. Punishment under POCSO is very harsh. And then she goes under IPC. So that has been also seen, that what is the punishment cannot determine whether somebody is liable or not. So in this case also, whether 3 lakhs is an appropriate amount, whether he can afford it or not, are not the criteria to determine should he be held liable or not, because that's the first question. After holding a person liable, then we determine what should be the punishment. Now we had these cases in attempt to commit suicide. Today we do not have that on the statute book, but it was there. So the punishment was maximum 6 months. After finding that yes, this person did try to commit suicide, then the question will be, should he be sent to 6 months, should he be sent to 3 months, should he be sent to 1 day? So the question of thinking of the punishment will arise only if the offense is proved. If the offense is not proved, there's no question of punishment. No? So the quantum of punishment is not the criteria to determine whether he should be punished or not. So let's come back to Jharkhand and the plastic ban. whether punishing people who did not know the law will promote the purpose of the law to have plastic-free Jharkhand.
Yeah, ma'am, I think yes, it will promote, because in case if this person is left free or is not fined with anything, then some people might misuse it and find it like an excuse from the next time.
That's a possibility. So if you allow people to go into the question of mens rea, then it will become very difficult to prosecute people. That's one argument. The purpose is to have plastic-free Jharkhand. That purpose will also be frustrated because some people who did not know the law, would not bother to know the law, will continue to use plastic. So in this case, reading the requirement of mens rea in the prohibition will frustrate the purpose of the law. And therefore, we cannot say, so this will be the cases where the person will be held liable. One, because the section does not require mens rea. Secondly, the purpose of the law will be frustrated if we start looking at the mens rea, at the state of mind of the people. So that's the test the judges has given in this case. They are not saying that automatically, if a section is silent. So what were the three propositions? One proposition was the law mentions a state of mind. He did this recklessly, did it rashly, did it negligently, did it knowingly. So all those are the categories where categorically the common law principle. What is the principle? What is the principle? Common law principle of criminal liability.
Act should be done with a guilty mind.
Yeah. So that principle is apparently applicable. Then there is the second category. We have Food Alteration Act. So there is a section in that legislation which says the mens rea is of no consequence for prosecuting people for selling adulterated food. So I did not know. Remember Sanjay Dutt? He had this gun, the AK some 47 rifle in the notified area infected with terrorism. So what was his intention in procuring that gun? Was to save his family. He had no intention to use it for purposes of terrorism. So therefore, in this case, the motive of purchasing that gun is no relevance. He has intentionally got a one. He did not know that purchasing AK-47 rifle in the notified area is an offense under TADA. But there are two legislations. One is at that point it was TADA. Terrorist TADA is what? Again, what is TADA full name? Terrorist and Destructive Activities Act, I think. So that legislation was one which provided for punishment of prosecution and punishment of people who did certain activities, including procuring guns. Then there is an Arms Act. Arms Act is not as such a stringent legislation as the TADA was. TADA provided for immediate arrest, no bail, minimum mandatory punishment. Arms Act did not provide all that. So Sanjay Dutt, if he had procured the same gun in another area which was not notified, he would not have to undergo the mandatory minimum punishment which was prescribed under the law. But because he did it in that area, so he did not know that it is a notified area and I will be charged under TADA. He would have been charged under Arms Act otherwise, but because the area was notified, he was charged under TADA. So for the purposes of ensuring that people do not buy guns, even though they have no intention of using it for terrorism purposes, should they be held liable under TADA? Should they be charged and convicted under TADA? They had no intention to do the activities prohibited under TADA. But that has the potential to be used like that. So it's a technical category again, that in the whole country, certain areas where there was a notification that these are terrorist infected areas, TADA will apply. In other parts, Arms Act will apply. So if you did not know that my area is notified and you purchase the gun, should you be, and TADA said no mens rea. We will not look into whether you had intention to disrupt or not, you had intention to use it for terrorist purposes or not. We will only say you have procured this gun.
So the
in such
argument is
cases,
completely correct because I think if everyone goes and buy a gun, there will be a lot of violence. I mean, you can see the scenario of America and all that countries. There's no such a rule regulating who can buy a gun and who cannot, and people fire at each other for fun and under the influence of alcohol and all that. Such incidents are very common over there. So I think
America has a different history why they have a fundamental right to have guns.
yeah.
So let's not get diverted onto that question. We are onto the question that in legislation, in case of TADA, specifically it said irrespective of your mens rea, irrespective of state of mind. So this is the second category for examples, the opposite category. So the offense of culpable homicide murder says with the intention or knowledge you do these activities, it is murder or culpable homicide. Very categorically, mens rea required. Then we have the category like the TADA, the categories like the Food Adulteration Act, where there is a provision which says mens rea will not be examined. Then we have the third category of offences like the Mayor Hans George case, FERA notification, or kidnapping, which do not use any word which indicate whether mens rea required or not. So the question is only in those categories that when the section is silent, when the legislation is silent about the requirement of mens rea, whether it will still be required or does it mean automatically that it is not required. Judges say neither of the two is correct. Neither we will say absence of mens rea means it is not required, nor does it mean it is still required because of the common law principle. We will not follow either of the two propositions. They have evolved a third proposition. We will look at the purpose of the legislation. The purpose of the legislation, if it will be promoted by excluding mens rea, we will exclude mens rea. If it will not affect the purpose of the legislation, we will still require mens rea. So there is no absolute rule one way or the other when the provision is silent. So what I was asking you to do is to examine that in bird flapping cases or any other example we can think of, that whether in requiring mens rea, when the section is silent, whether it will frustrate the purpose or will it promote the purpose. So when we look at Jharkhand, we said that if we say that no, we will look into the question of mens rea, then a lot of people will plead ignorance. That's one. Whether they will succeed or not is a secondary level. And even if they were ignorant, it is not a false case. Even if majority of the people remain ignorant and they get away from prosecution on that ground, then the purpose of the law to have plastic-free Jharkhand will not be achieved. It will be frustrated, therefore imposing strict liability. So the areas where we impose criminal liability without there being mens rea are called offences of strict liability. That you are strictly liable because you have fulfilled the conditions laid down by the law. So merely actus reus is required in those cases. The general principle was mens rea, actus reus both required. But in offences where the section is silent and we feel inclusion of mens rea will frustrate the purpose, in those cases, merely the actus reus is sufficient. Yes, Tushar.
Ma'am, can literacy be an excuse? For example, in the boatman case, where boatman was in that case, the person say that I am illiterate, I can't read the newspaper, and any notification by the government comes in the newspaper. So he has no means of getting the new law which has been passed by the government. So how could he be charged for that?
No, that's what, na, when we come to the individual persons knowing the law or not, then we are saying that the defense of ignorance of law is no excuse. That goes out.
Yes, but one side law commissions say that we have very much illiterate people, and literacy rate
No.
of the law is
No,
very
no.
less in
Today,
India.
look, literacy rate and illiteracy of law are two different things. Even an illiterate person knows that killing another person is not right. You don't need to know the law. You don't have the ability to be literate for you to know this law. Secondly, in today's world especially, advertisements of new laws are not only limited to the print media, they are there in the audiovisual media also. They are on the news, they are on the radio, they are on the TV, they are on the now all the phones have lots of information. So there are lots of sources. But this whole question that because I'm illiterate, I cannot read the law. When you came to the law faculty, you knew English, but there are lots of words of legal English you did not know. So you can you say, well, oh, I know English, but I do not know legal English. I know law, but I do not know medicine. We cannot make those arguments. No, if you're doing things which are I did not know that I am supposed to pay tax on my, how much tax I need to pay, what is GST on my thing. All these categories of the question whether the subjective knowledge is the criteria. If you go into the question of subjective knowledge, then to determine what is the exact knowledge this person has, you will never be able to prosecute anyone. And when we say that the distinction is made between ignorance of law and ignorance of fact. So ignorance of fact, and especially in offenses which are mala in se, nobody can plead that I did not know the law. In the technical categories also, the judges are then there. It is because of this only that in technical offenses, the judges are saying, we will look, Nirupam, 1 second. So in cases like these, the judges are saying, we are not saying automatically you will be held liable. We will apply our mind to find out whether your ignorance will lead to frustrating the purpose. So one, there is an obligation to find out the activity that you do to know whether you're doing it lawfully or not. So ordinary categories, boating, for example, is not an illegal activity. But there are some places signs are put up saying boating in this place is not prohibited. So it is not that there is anything inherently wrong in boating. So same ways that when it comes to the categories which are not inherently wrong, but have been declared to be wrong, and the law does not say. So procuring, keeping arms in America is a fundamental right. In India, we have always said you can procure license and the arms with license. So it is you are not permitted to have guns without the license. So the law is completely opposite in India and in America. Having permitted you to have licensed guns, then we have the other laws which say that no, in certain categories you cannot have, you can have licensed guns and certainly not unlicensed guns. And AK-47 certainly was not a licensed category for Sanjay Dutt. But when it comes to the notification, there's a technical category again, that whether the liability will be strict or that the liability will be based on your mens rea. So in those cases, when the legislator has not provided us a guideline, through circumstances, the legislature itself provides the guideline. In the common law, when it was a judge-evolved law, judges always applied the requirement of mens rea. But when it came to statutory law, the position has arisen, and two writers have taken two positions earlier. One which used to say that if there is a silence, it is not required because this legislation has categorically mentioned the sections in which mens rea is required. And the cases when it is not required, they have not mentioned it. The other position of legal scholar was that silence means that the common law principle still regulates. So that is the controversy which has been addressed in Mayor Hans George. And the judges have held that it is not the absence of the mens rea requirement which will determine. We will have to apply the further test to find out whether the purpose of the law will be frustrated. If the purpose of the law will be frustrated, we will not hear, you were illiterate, you did not know, you did not have TV, you did not get to know of this, the transition, the change came only yesterday, you did not know it. You will not hear any of that. It will be applied strictly. You will be convicted by strict liability. We will not apply the principle of mens rea. But if the application of the law will not be applicated, the implementation of law will not be impacted negatively by inclusion of mens rea, we will say that yes, you will be held liable only if you had the intention to violate the law. So the situation remains individualistic. The decision in such cases will be divided on the merits of each case, of each instance of violation. There's no general principle. That's what we are learning in this case, that absence of requirement of mens rea automatically does not mean either way. Neither it means mens rea still required, nor does it mean mens rea not required. The language of the law will not determine. What will determine will be the purpose of the law. Is that clear? Read the case one more time. If you have still more questions, we can ask tomorrow.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, good. Everybody is putting their attendance. Time for us to stop for today. Arlene, do you have something to add?
Ma'am, you have covered everything. This is what I also tell in my classes, that it's the object of the statute, nature of the purpose, and the mischief it is aimed at to redress, suppress. So these are the factors which we need to take into consideration to decide whether mens rea is excluded by necessary implication or not. So that's how I
Ma'am, can I
also
ask something?
Yes.
मैम जो पॉस्को का ऑब्जेक्टिव है इट इज टू प्रिवेंट सेक्सुअल ऑफेंसेस फ्रॉम मतलब चिल्ड्रंस को प्रिवेंट करना बट द केस यू सेड जिसमें द मेल गाय ही डिडंट न्यू दैट द गर्ल इज माइनर तो मैम इस केस में इफ वी एक्सक्यूज हिम तो मैम पर्पस जो है पॉस्को का तो मैम डोंट यू थिंक इट विल नॉट बी अचीव्ड?
अभी तक तो मेंस rea ले ही नहीं रहे. This has been all offenses of strict liability. POCSO has been interpreted as just strict liability.
That the girl was blatantly lying about her age. How can then the guy be held liable for the offense?
Because the girl is a child, the child gets the protection. We'll return to POCSO. We have a lot of occasions to talk of POCSO also.
Ma'am,
we'll stop today. We'll continue our conversation tomorrow. So tomorrow's case is a follow-up, another one on strict liability. Narayan.
State of Madhya Pradesh versus
Narayan Singh. So we'll look at Narayan Singh tomorrow and see how the judges have applied the same principle. It's only another example. No new principle has been given there, and see what have the judges said and how they have applied the principle laid down in Mayor Hans George. We'll look at that case tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks,
ma'am. Stop recording.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes?
Ma'am, yesterday I was present for